In the ruthless world of 1960s American racing, the Shelby Cobra had found its throne, dominating tracks with unmatched speed and precision. But then came the 1964 Bill Thomas Cheetah, a car so rare and radical it was almost mythical. Built with secret backing from Chevrolet, the Cheetah was designed to be the ultimate Cobra killer, crafted with a lightweight frame, a roaring Corvette engine, and a mid-engine-like layout that pushed design boundaries. Yet, only a handful were ever made, each one hand-built, with no two exactly alike. In the end, the Cheetah became not just a competitor, but a legend of its own. Could this rare machine have been the one to dethrone the Cobra? In the early 1960s, racing was getting faster, tougher, and more competitive than ever. The American racing world was shaken up when Carroll Shelby's Cobra burst onto the scene, leaving tire marks and broken records in its wake. This small, lightweight car, powered by a Ford V8 engine, had incredible speed and agility, and it was quickly becoming a sensation on tracks across the US. The Cobra didn't just perform well, it dominated. The Ford-backed Cobra was making a real statement, challenging cars that were far more established in the racing world. For Chevrolet, the Cobra was a problem. Chevy had the Corvette, a powerful and popular sports car in its own right, but the Corvette just couldn't match the Cobra's handling and speed in races. Chevy needed an answer to the Cobra, a car that could not only keep up, but possibly surpass it. That's where Bill Thomas came into the picture. Bill Thomas wasn't a typical car designer or engineer. He was a car tuner and racer with a deep understanding of Chevrolet vehicles. Living in California, Thomas had been working with Chevrolet for years, tuning and modifying Corvettes for racing, and building a name for himself as someone who knew how to make Chevy cars go faster and handle better. By 1963, he had his own company, Bill Thomas Race Cars, and a reputation for pushing performance boundaries. When Chevy needed someone to take on Shelby's Cobra, Thomas was the natural choice. But here's the catch: Chevrolet couldn't officially support racing efforts. There was a no racing agreement among American car companies that kept them from openly supporting or funding racing projects. Chevy had to keep its involvement low-key, but they still wanted Thomas to develop a car that could take on the Cobra. So, they provided parts, engines, and other resources behind the scenes, giving Thomas what he needed to get started on a project that would become legendary, the 1964 Cheetah. Starting from scratch, Thomas and his lead fabricator Don Edmonds set out to design a car that could challenge the Cobra's lightweight, high-speed design. They didn't have high-tech tools, fancy blueprints, or computer models. Instead, Edmonds laid out the car's main components: the engine, transmission, and differential, right on the floor. He used chalk to sketch the layout of the car around these parts, visualizing how everything would fit together in a compact, streamlined way. This approach wasn't typical, but it allowed them to work with the parts they had in a very direct way, seeing how each component would fit and contribute to the overall design. From this hands-on approach, the foundation of the Cheetah began to take shape. The car was incredibly compact, with a wheelbase of just 90 inches, similar to the Cobra's 90-inch wheelbase, but the Cheetah had an even more aggressive, closed cockpit look. The car sat low, with a roofline that was only 42 inches high, making it sleek and aerodynamic. The design wasn't just about aesthetics. Thomas and Edmonds were aiming for a car that could compete with the Cobra's agility and speed, and every decision they made was focused on that goal. One of the Cheetah's standout features was its engine. Chevy gave Thomas access to the powerful Corvette 327 V8 engine, which was capable of producing up to 375 horsepower when properly tuned. This engine was already a solid choice, but in the Cheetah's lightweight frame, it was truly impressive. The car weighed just around 1,500 pounds, meaning the Cheetah had one of the best power-to-weight ratios of any car of its time. By comparison, the Cobra was also fast, using Ford's 260 and 289 small block V8s, but the Cheetah's Corvette engine gave it an edge in sheer power. Thomas and Edmonds made a unique decision with the engine placement. They positioned it so far back in the car that it was practically in the middle of the frame. This engine layout was highly unusual for a front-engine car. By moving the engine so far back, they were able to create a nearly 50-50 weight distribution, which helped with stability and handling, especially in straight-line racing. With the engine position like this, the driver's seat had to be moved forward, creating a small, cramped cockpit that was close to the car's center. The design made the Cheetah almost feel like a mid-engine car, even though it technically wasn't. However, this unique layout came with some challenges. The driver's legs were positioned right next to the engine, with exhaust headers running along the sides. This meant the cockpit got intensely hot, making it feel like an oven during races. The heat wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a serious issue that affected drivers' endurance and ability to perform. By comparison, the Cobra had an open cockpit design, which allowed for better airflow and a much cooler driving experience. The Cheetah wasn't just hot inside, it also handled differently than the Cobra, especially on twisty tracks. The Cobra was known for its balanced handling and was incredibly agile on corners, but the Cheetah's short wheelbase and extreme engine placement made it twitchy at high speeds. It was fast in a straight line, but on tight turns, the car could be difficult to control. This became clear in its early testing. While it could reach an incredible top speed of over 185 miles per hour, the car's short wheelbase and unique weight distribution made it challenging to control, especially compared to the Cobra's smoother handling on curves. The body of the Cheetah also evolved over time. The first models were made with aluminium bodies, created by California Metal Shaping, but aluminium was expensive and difficult to work with. To cut costs and save production time, Thomas eventually switched to fiberglass bodies. Fiberglass was lighter, cheaper, and easier to shape, allowing Thomas to create more Cheetahs more quickly. However, because each car was essentially handmade, no two Cheetahs were exactly alike. Each car had its own quirks, making every Cheetah unique. Despite these challenges, the Cheetah showed remarkable potential. Its straight-line speed was one of its biggest strengths, reaching 0 to 60 miles per hour in just about 3.5 seconds. This was incredibly fast for the time, and on long, straight tracks, the Cheetah could easily hold its own against and even outperform the Cobra. But as testing continued, it became clear that the Cheetah's strengths and weaknesses were very different from the Cobra's. The Cobra was a balanced, agile car that could handle both straightaways and turns with ease. The Cheetah, meanwhile, was a beast in a straight line, but struggled on twisty tracks where stability and control were crucial. Bill Thomas had big dreams for the Cheetah. The car wasn't just a one-off project or an experimental design. Thomas saw the Cheetah competing in GT-class races, going toe-to-toe with Shelby's Cobra on tracks across the country. The Sports Car Club of America, or SCCA, was the main organization governing these kinds of races, and their rules set the standards for what made a car eligible for GT-class racing. To qualify, manufacturers had to produce at least 100 units of the car to prove it wasn't a one-off, but a production vehicle. Thomas believed he could reach that target with Chevrolet's help. But then, in 1964, SCCA raised the bar, changing the production requirement from 100 units to 1,000. That was a game changer. Producing 1,000 Cheetahs was simply out of reach for a smaller builder like Thomas, and without Chevrolet's official support, it was simply impossible. With the new rules in place, Chevrolet realized that the Cheetah couldn't realistically meet the GT class standards. Quietly, they started pulling back and stopped providing the parts, engines, and resources Thomas needed. And just like that, he was on his own. The project he'd envisioned as a Cobra killer now seemed to be losing ground before it even had a chance to compete. But Thomas didn't give up. Despite Chevy's pullout, he continued to build Cheetahs for private buyers, even if he had to do it with limited resources. Without Chevrolet's backing, the Cheetah was never mass-produced, making it one of the rarest American sports cars of its time. Thomas managed to build around 11 Cheetahs, and each one was practically handmade. These cars were unique, with small variations that made each one special, but the limited production meant that the Cheetah couldn't make a big impact on the racing world. When the Cheetah first became available, it was priced comparatively for a race-ready car in its class. Although records vary, its initial price tag ranged from around $10,000 to $15,000. Still a hefty investment at the time, especially considering its limited availability and unique design. Given its performance potential and exclusivity, this was seen as a high-value offer for buyers looking to make a statement on the track with a powerful American-made machine. While the Cobra went on to become a legend with widespread fame and numerous replicas, the Cheetah remained a rare gem, admired by a small group of dedicated fans and collectors. Today, owning an original Cheetah is like having a piece of racing history, a symbol of what could have been if the Cheetah had gotten the full shot at challenging the Cobra. Even with its limited production, the Cheetah did make it to some races, and it had its moments on the track. Driver Jerry Titus was one of the Cheetah's champions, pushing the car to its limits despite its quirks. In 1964, Titus raced the Cheetah at Riverside International Raceway, where the car's speed showed real promise. Unfortunately, during that race, a water hose came loose, spraying water under the rear tires and causing the car to spin off the track. Despite setbacks like these, Titus and other drivers continued to race the Cheetah. Though it never became the Cobra killer Thomas had envisioned it to be, it won some smaller events and gained a reputation as a unique and daring machine. One of the Cheetahs even made it into pop culture, appearing in the Elvis Presley movie Spin Out, which added to its mystique. Years after the original production, the Cheetah's legend continued. In the early 2000s, a continuation series of Cheetahs was produced with Bill Thomas's approval. This series allowed new generations of enthusiasts to experience the Cheetah, albeit in a modernized form. These continuation models stayed true to the original design, but with updated materials and technology, making them safer and more practical to drive. The continuation series helped keep the Cheetah's spirit alive, allowing more people to experience what it was like to drive this ambitious, unconventional car. Today, the Cheetah is a rare and highly sought-after collector's piece, with only about 11 original models produced. An authentic Cheetah can now command hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. In recent years, prices for original Cheetahs have reached well over $500,000, depending on the car's condition, history, and documented authenticity. For car collectors and racing enthusiasts, owning a Cheetah is like holding a unique piece of racing history, and its value continues to appreciate as its legend grows. Today, the Cheetah is remembered as a what-if car in American racing history. It represents a bold attempt to challenge the Shelby Cobra, a car that dared to break the rules and push boundaries. The Cheetah's daring design, its incredible speed, and its unique challenges make it one of the most fascinating cars of its era. Even though it didn't achieve the widespread fame of the Cobra, the Cheetah is celebrated by collectors and racing fans alike as a symbol of American innovation and ambition. Its rarity and unique history make it a valuable collector's item, often fetching high prices when one comes up for sale. If you enjoyed this dive into racing history, make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which car you'd like us to explore next.